So we gotta share with the employees. Because without employees, we can't make a profit. And if employees make more money, they have more purchasing power. The economy functions better. But we must open up. We must. It's so crucial that small enterprise, that we don't tie them up in chains and with regulations.
Hello, everyone watching and listening. Today, I have the honor to speak with Frank Stronach, founder and CEO of Magna International, one of Canada and the world's great companies. Frank built that company from nothing, starting in the 1950s. It's quite a story. We discuss the keys to motivating yourself, to starting and maintaining a successful and expanding business, why that's a good thing for yourself and everybody else. The idea contained within his corporate constitution. It's an economic charter of rights which advocates for the input, autonomy, and profit sharing among all workers, management, shareholders, etc. And I'm very much looking forward to talking about it with him. Hello, Mr. Stronach. It's very, very nice to see you. We met a couple of months ago at a restaurant in Toronto, and I had the opportunity to talk to you about your business ventures over the last 5 or 6 decades, which I found extraordinarily interesting. And in the intervening period of time, I've read one of your books, the one that's more autobiographical, and I'm very interested in your story. I thought you would make a particularly good podcast guest because one of the things I do with my podcast is walk people through the lives of successful individuals, because I think it would be better if people believed that they could move forward successfully in the world and that they were equipped with some knowledge about how to do that. And I think that's something we could really concentrate on, focusing in on. I know it's very important to you in this podcast. You came to Canada in the 1950s. We'll go through your story autobiographically. You came armed with a tiny bit of money, some actual skill, some determination, and out of that you built a massive business empire. Let's start with this. Not everyone listening and watching are going to know what Magna Enterprises is. So would you do us the favor first of laying out your business empire? Tell people what it is that you do and what you've accomplished, how you're spread out through the world, what you guys manufacture. Just lay out the story, the description of Magna.
Okay, I've always said life is a question of fate and circumstances, being at the right places at the right time with the right ingredients. As it happened, I was born in a working class family. And when I finished my schooling and I had 1 or 2 years practical experience, I wanted to see the world. I applied for a visa to South Africa, Australia, the United States, and Canada. Sometimes I'm a little tough on the Canadian bureaucracy, but I'm saying it's still the best because they came first forward with a visa. So I landed in Quebec City. I took the cheapest fare I could, from Holland on a coal freighter. And so I arrived in Quebec in, I think it was about April 1954. And the immigration officer asked me, do you know anybody in Canada? I said, no. So I said, well, then you go to Montreal. So I took a train to Montreal, but I didn't know anybody. My English was reasonable okay, and there were some English-speaking people on that ship, and so I tried to practice my English. So anyway, I knew because I had $200 in my pocket, and I knew that wouldn't last me too long if I would right away board a hotel or whatever. So the people told me, look, just walk along the streets, and it's customary. If you see a sign, room to let, just knock on the door, and then you might get a room. So I did walk for an hour or two, right? I knocked on the door. There were a few signs I've seen. I knocked on the door. I think I kind of looked a little rough from the long journey, and so they say it's already leased. But I did find the room. So the next morning I got up and I looked at the road maps. I looked at and walked around, and I worked in the factory. But it was in '54. There was a major recession. I just couldn't find a job, right? And during that time, I was hungry not because I wanted to lose weight. I was hungry. I had no money to buy food. And if you experience that, that's an impression which will last forever. It's burnt in your soul, right? So anyway, I ran out of money. I was hungry. I had an acquaintance, not a close friend, but somebody I know from the same town I came from. And that was in Kitchener, right? So I saved enough money I bought a Greyhound bus ticket and I moved to Kitchener. I traveled by bus by Kitchener from Montreal. And so when I got off the main square, I asked somebody where such and such address is. They said, look, go up there 4 blocks and then ask again. And so up 4 blocks, ask you, well, go up 3 more blocks and then you might have to make a left turn. So after about 2 hours of walking, I could find the house where that fella lived, and I knocked on the door, and an elderly lady said, Max, that was the fellow's name, there's somebody here who wants to see me. I was it was a very happy feeling, to meet somebody which you know from previous days. So anyway, Max came down, and he looked at me and said, you look a little rough. Are you hungry? I said, yes, come on in. So the next day, I slept there. The next day, we started job hunting. In the industrial site, there was nothing, but I did find a job at the Kitchener-Waterloo Hospital in the kitchen. And so I felt so sorry for myself. I feel when I come to Canada, I get a manly job, cutting trees down or digging out stones, something manly. But I was there in the kitchen with a lot of elderly women, nothing against elderly women. My mother was an elderly woman. I liked her, but I felt sorry for myself, peeling potatoes, washing salads, etc., etc. So in the evening, I was just itching to get away to be amongst people. In those days, there was an Austrian club in Kitchener, so I went there. In those days, there was slow dancing, right? A lot of music, and when I danced with a girl, what you do, where you're from. I say, I'm from Austria. What you do? Well, I work in a hospital. My hands were so smooth from washing dishes. They thought I was a surgeon. So, but towards the end, I always kind of said, no, I'm just working in the kitchen. Then I guess they didn't want to dance close. They didn't want to go out with a guy which works in the kitchen, but that's the way life is. But anyway, after a little while, after about a month or so, I did find a job in an engineering and a production-oriented company. Their company worked exclusively for the Aero aircraft, right? Which Canada developed, but that project wasn't financed anymore, and it was closed. The factory, the Aero aircraft factory, I think, was closed. The company I worked for was closed, so I hitchhiked a ride from Kitchener to Oakville. Ford was building a new factory at the time. There were huge lineups. I waited for about 2-3 hours before they interviewed me, and they interviewed. Looked, yes, you're dual and die maker. You're too young to get any experiences. So I wasn't hired, and I drifted to Toronto, then I hitchhiked right to Toronto. But years later, I had many times, a meeting, a lunch meeting, dinner meeting with the president of Ford, and they told me, "You're lucky. If I got hired at the time, I would be the president, right?" So I could tease him, right? I knew him well enough that I could. But anyway, I did find a job then, a very small company, about 10 people. After a year, after a few months, the owner said, "You're doing a great job. I want you to be a partner of mine." And my chest swelled a little, and that's great. And nice guy, but he'd never wrote it down, what it's all about. So I said to myself, there's nothing to do to run a factory. So I looked in the papers, and I found a job. I got paid a lot more. I moved in a rooming house where the toilets were in the hallway, and I saved every dollar. After a couple of years, I saved about $5,000. I rented a garage. Actually, it was the gatehouse of Standard Products in Dufferin and DuPont in Toronto. And the size was about maybe double the garage. I bought a few used machines. I had a $5,000 saved up. I guess in terms today, that would be at least 100 or 150,000, right? So I bought the used machines, and out I went hustling. I knocked on factory doors, and I said, I'm great in solving problems. And I said, "Look, if I can't solve the problems, you don't have to pay me." But anyway, after 1 month, I hired a worker. After a year, I had about 10 workers. After 2 years, about 20. After 5 years, about 4,000. After 10 years, about 75,000. After 20 years, 125,000. And then I built up a company with 170,000 employees in 34 different countries. So anyway, the message I want to get across is, when we're younger, we all hustle to make some monies so that we can live in dignity. I guess I could have lived in dignity in all the 34 countries, but I chose Canada. I think I've seen the world, and I met just about every president, from Clinton to Putin to Tony Blair, just about everybody. And I could see Canada perhaps the only country now which could be a role model, where we could implement an economic charter of rights. Magna basically is more than a business. It's really a culture. I call it the fair enterprise system. The basic philosophy on fair enterprise is the human charter of rights alone is not sufficient. We have to fortify it with an economic charter of rights. Economic charters of rights will lead to economic democracies, and economic democracies are the basis for democracy itself. But let me explain it a little better, because we don't talk too much about it. Those conversations are not they're not plentiful, right? But let me simplify things now. All the politicians, all business, matter of fact, most people agree if the economy doesn't work, nothing else will work. You cannot feed the hungry. You cannot look after the most fragile people, the elderly, the sick, and the handicapped. But we do not talk what drives the economy. The economy is driven by 3 forces: smart managers, hardworking employees, and investors. That means all 3 have a right to the outcome, which is profits. The message I want to get across is, if we fail, or if we do not let workers participate in profits, then we got a problem, okay? Because the world has always been dominated by the golden rule, and still is. The people which have the gold make the rules. I don't want to be dominated by anyone. If I feel that strong then I should not be able to dominate somebody either. So thereby, the only way we be able to achieve that is via an economic charter of rights. The message I want to get across to Canadians is the human charter of rights alone is not sufficient. We have to fortify it with an economic charter of rights. Economic charter of rights, as I said before, will lead to economic democracies. And economic democracies are the basis for democracy itself. The human charter of rights alone doesn't mean a lot of things. For a kid in inner city Detroit is free to be hungry. So the amazing story about the whole thing is, when I put in a corporate constitution at Magna, it was about in the mid-late 80s, the Constitution basically said, or the most important thing on the Constitution was, we predetermined what we do with the profits. So the Constitution said, the profit sharing said, 20% of the profits go to the shareholders, 10% goes to the employees over and above their wages, half in shares, half in cash, 6% management gets, 2% charity gets, and 7% is reinvested for research. So when I put the Constitution in, the profits went up the first year about 40%, the second year about 100%, the third year about 200%. When you empower employees, where they share, where there's a clear-cut concept, where they share in the profits, you release an enormous energy. You know, because they're on the front line, the employees on the front line. They can see what you have to do to make a better product for a better price. So that's what it's all about. That's the kind of that's what the world needs. You know, we stand perhaps at a crossroad. Who will dominate the world? The United States is slipping to a certain extent. The United States has dominated the world for the last 100 years. And where freedom and religious freedom, freedom to speak, and a lot of freedom are great, right? We have maybe followed it up, and we could do a little better there. But the United States, unfortunately, has a lot of problems. There's cancer in the inner cities. The poverty is enormous. I don't know if it's feasible, right? But the key question we have to ask ourselves: what can we do? Because the divide is too great. There's so much money held by just a few, and there's so much poverty by many. Okay, so what do we have to do to level that out? Not completely. You should never level it out. At the same time, I say, a country which stifles its citizen in pursuit of productivity, ingenuity, creativity is a decaying society, because you have the society or the world's made up of different minds, different desires, let everybody choose their own road to happiness. Okay? So, but it's very important. So I divide actually the program. I classify business over 300 employees. It's a large business. Below 300 people, it's a small business. The law would stipulate that the large business, which have more than 300 employees, that the law would provide that workers could share in some of the profits. And that could be determined, right? It could be an escalated program. The small business basically is the backbone of any country. They pay the most taxes, they have the most employment, and this is where, call it, the new products come forward, the new technology, etc. So we must do everything we can that we take the red tapes off, take the chains of small business, and let small business operate under the pure free enterprise principles. So the bureaucracy has climbed enormously, you know. I could never build a Magna anymore. Imagine starting out in a garage. Imagine to build 170,000 employees, over 400 factories worldwide. I could never, because I would choke under the first factory, right? And I could give you examples now how cumbersome it is, right? Okay, and when we look back 40, 50 years, yes, we have a lot of security, our safety measurement, and, buildings have to be built that then won't collapse over the snow load, etc. But the bureaucracy has climbed to such an extent. But I'd like to point out, to bring about change, you won't bring about change if you point the fingers whose fault it is. And you cannot do it with a chainsaw either. So I'm saying it's not the fault of the bureaucrats. In a free society, everybody has a right to find a job, whatever the job openings are. It's the system we have to change. Our politicians are trapped in the systems, because the politics is whoever brings forward something new, any politician or party, they won't win because you could criticize them. So this is the problem. Politics, government can't fix things. So it needs a private citizen. It needs a coalition of what I would call concerned Canadians, where you could leave the program relative short, that you could combine. This is what we need to get the economy going. Because the economy, I think it's frightening what will happen over the next 5, 10 years. We don't make things anymore. When you see factories, the factories are all warehouses. We don't make things. And when a country doesn't make things, they got to import everything. That is where the economy breaks down, and where there's no jobs, where people go hungry. So we got to avoid that. So I think I've given you a bit of a short overview, and I would be very happy to answer questions and how can we fix things.
Okay, so I would like to know, first of all, what skills you brought to Canada with you and how long it took you to acquire those skills, say on the tool and die maker side. And then also, what attitude you think you brought to bear to your work that enticed the first person, for example, to offer you a partnership, but that also made you capable of taking the risk and developing the vision to rent that first empty garage. So how were you trained? How long did that take? What made you a good potential partner? And why did you have enough daring, let's say, or vision to rent that first garage?
Well, the training, I served high school. It was only 8 classes. And I proposed in Canada, high school should end at grade 10, grade 11, and grade 12. Students should focus, we should teach them trades. And that doesn't mean that the students after grade 12 couldn't go to university. I'm just now telling people the situation I was exposed to. So it was a 3.5-year program. We had 1 or 2 days where we had theoretical stuff, where we had to be in classrooms, and let's say 4 days we were in the workshop on the floor learning different things. So that was the program.
What did you learn? What skills did you acquire?
Tool making is sort of for every. You need, let's say. Let's take this pen here. That's not made by hand. Huh? there's so much precision, so much knowledge goes in a writing pen. The ink's got to come out for the next few months. It's such a minute just that you can read and write. So you got to make machines or tools, or people may understand. Well, let's say a bumper for a car is not made by hand, huh? Okay, you need a mold because it's plastic, right? And it's so this is what tool making is about, right? And this is maybe the most important trade to get things done, to get things made, right? When you take a car, might it be a door, might it be a seat, might it be the bumper, right? You need tools, you need dies, and then special machinery. So that will, call it the basics, would take 3 to 4 years. And then it might take another few years till you slowly work yourself up that you be a qualified tool and die maker.
We're facing the threat of a government shutdown later this month. And yet again, the administration will ultimately deal with it the same way they always do, with more spending. More spending equals a lower value of the dollar. Protect your savings by diversifying into gold with the help of the Birch Gold Group. And here's the best part. When you open a gold IRA with Birch Gold, for every $10,000 you spend by December 22nd, Birch Gold will send you a free gold bar. Just text Jordan to 989898 to claim eligibility before Black Friday. Birch Gold can even help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold for no money out of pocket, and you still get the free gold bars. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of satisfied customers, you can count on Birch Gold to help you navigate transitioning an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. Don't let your savings become a victim of the further devaluation of the dollar through more spending. Text Jordan to 989898.
And so what machines did you learn to operate when you were doing your training? And you also mentioned earlier that you were confident in putting yourself forward as a good problem solver. And so what was the relationship between learning those machines? What machines did you learn, and how did that facilitate your development as a problem solver?
Interesting. The first, when I came out of high school, my first day at that factory, I needed a platform because I couldn't quite reach up, right? I was 14 years of age. I couldn't reach up. There was a vice grip mounted on the thing here. And then there was a piece of steel. The piece of steel was about 4 inches square. Okay, we took 2 people to lift that steel up on the vice grip, and then we had a hacksaw, a metal hacksaw. We had to cut a piece down 4 inches square, and that took maybe a week. Okay, till we cut the thing down. And then it took maybe about 3-4 weeks. We had to file it perfectly square. So that, it's an amazing thing what that leads to and how you accumulate the precision work, right? I did a similar school in Canada where we had a school here to teach young kids how to be tool and die makers, right? But anyway, so you go, and then we learn things on a lathe where you make round things, or a milling machine, and later on precision computerized machines, etc., etc. So you go to a stage, right? Okay. So anyway, that's what I did. My first job then in Toronto as a tool and die maker. We made a stamping die, right? We did to maybe punch out a piece of metal and with some holes in it. And so that's basically what the tool and die maker does. And as you go along, it gets more and more sophisticated.
Right. So you got familiarized with a wide variety of tools and the ability to make precision parts. Now, you said you also became a good problem solver, and then you also developed this idea that you could rent your own garage and start producing your own tools. Now, one of the things you said was that when you went out to sell your services, you told your potential customers that you could solve a problem, and if you didn't, they didn't have to pay you. And, the reason I want to focus on that in part is because I want to know how you developed the vision to rent that garage to begin with, but also how you knew that the proper thing to sell to potential customers was your service as a problem solver, right? Because what you're saying to them essentially is, well, you guys have a problem and it's plaguing you and you need it solved. And I'm the guy that can solve it, and I'm willing to, demonstrate my capabilities, which is really an excellent approach to sales, because you want to find out what the person's problem is and you want to be the solution. But how did you develop that problem-solving ability and your confidence in it? And then why did you think it was worth taking the risk to rent that first garage?
Jordan, you ask great questions. I mean, those have to be answered. The reason why I'm sitting here is, look, I want to roll off the experience I accumulated. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of young Canadians out there which could do the same thing if we teach them the basics, right? And I think a society would be much better off with thousands of smaller companies than one or two large companies, right? That's the idea. So anyway, so I opened up that factory. I could solve a few problems. I got some orders, and I like I said, after 2 years, I had about 20 people, and I noticed my foreman was a little different, right? Because when he had just got, you work so closely together. His name was Herman. I said, Herman, what's the matter with you lately? Well, he said, Frank, I'm thinking of opening my own factory. I said, I sympathize with that. That's what I did too. I said, look, why don't we talk tomorrow? Maybe we can find a better solution. That evening I was talking to myself, and I said to myself, if that foreman's going to leave me, that would stifle my growth. I didn't like that. The next reason was, if that foreman's going to leave me, I got to do all the work myself. I liked that even less. The third reason was, if I hire a new foreman and I don't show him how to run a business, I still got to do all the work. And if I hire a new foreman and I show him how business is run, it's just a question of time before he goes out and opens up his new factory. I think the key is we need those experience. There is this huge potential, right? This huge energy which lies dormant in people. We have to teach them the right way. So I think it's important, while I'm still have everything in my mind quite clearly, that we record that. And it's great that your skill is to ask the right question: how come and how what, right? Okay, so I'm delighted to sit here.
Well, so you grew very rapidly. So there's two mysteries there to me, because one of the things I've noticed with small businesses, for example, is that it's very difficult to get your first customers, right? It's very difficult to get from 0 to 1. Once you have a customer or two, the next customers start to be easier because you can refer them to other customers you have. But getting those first people to decide that you're the person when no one else has done it or has been willing to show that faith, that can be very tricky. So what do you think you managed successfully how do you think you managed to present yourself successfully to the first people that you offered your services to?
Well, price and quality, does it function, right? And if you have a lot of knowledge and you transmit that knowledge to other people, then you can give a great service, better pricing, better functioning machinery, better tools. So that's the very key, and that's what I would like to transmit. So fortunately, around that time, that's why I'm always saying life is a question of fate and circumstances, being at the right place at the right time. Around in the early 60s, there was a free trade arrangement signed with the United States. And I see this huge potential out there. I should say I didn't finish up when I talked the next day with my foreman, where I said to him, look, why don't we open up a new factory? You own a third. And I said, no more overtime. I own 2/3. And by the end of the year, we take pro rata some monies out and we leave some monies in for expansions. He said, do you mean it? I said, yes. We went right away to a lawyer and signed the thing here. And the guy hustled like crazy. You know, he spent more time in there. That was his factory. Basically, I took the next foreman, the next foreman, the next foreman, the next foreman. I said, business is easy, right? And then when I had about, I think it was about 6 or 7 factories, and the free trade arrangement came under the being, I saw this enormous potential up there. Up to that now, I only shared with the foreman. I said, and then I got to know the United States better, Canada better, the power of the unions, the size of the unions. And I said, I would have to do certain things to be competitive. So I had a friend of mine, a machinery dealer, and he said, I kind of explained to him, I really should go public because I want to have the workers also participate. Well, he says, I know a fellow, which his name is, I'll remember the name, it's immaterial, but anyway, he gave me the name. I met him at the ski hill. We went skiing together up at Georgian Peaks, and he said, look, that was Magna Electronics, okay? He said, I have a certain age, I would like to retire. Why don't you sell your companies in Magna Electronics and you have close to control, and then you could put that program in that where you can share the profits with workers. So that's what I finally did. I was totally green when it comes down to public company, right? I did not have total control. I had a board there, right? And they were more in driving the stock up, right? And the defense industry was very, they were mainly, Magna Electronic did mainly defense work, right? And that was very popular. And I was in automotive, and I said, after a year or so, I said, I don't think this makes a lot of, I said, I want to be out, okay? And I said, I sell my stock on the market. So they pleaded with me, please sell the stock to us. And I said, fine, no problem. And give us a year time. And I said, fine. They were basically okay guys. But the market kind of went down. The shares dipped. They didn't have the monies. I never sued anybody, and I just said, look, under the circumstances, you guys can't be on the board. And then I put in different directors, and after a while, I went to the board and went to the public and say, I forgo about 25% of my stocks if you, the shareholders, vote for a multiple vote. Because I came to the conclusion, I want to run things, and I can't have 20 guys or 50 guys left and right discussing, debating forever, right? So the shareholders voted for that. Then I said, in return, I also give your thing a certain discipline. This is where I put the corporate constitution in, that if I had control, I only could take out so much. There was clear-cut control what management could do. And that sort of became the Magna environment.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, let's go back to your foreman. So you had said that when you made that arrangement with him, that you valued his work and you wanted him around, and you were concerned that if he left, well, all of that work would fall on your shoulders again and also stop you from moving ahead. And you sat down and contemplated what sort of deal you would have to make with him. in order for his needs to be met and yours. And there's something very important there about the nature of a deal. People often think that with a deal, you try to win, or with a deal, you try to compromise. But my sense with a proper negotiation is that you want to figure out what you want so that you're thrilled to progress with the deal. And you want to figure out what your partner wants so he's thrilled to progress with the deal. Because if you set it up that way, then your interests are aligned and you're both going to work as hard as you can autonomously. Now, you knew your foreman had the same kind of entrepreneurial vision you did, and you wanted to unleash his abilities. And so you offered him a third of the company. You said you'd take 2/3. And then you said he was thrilled, which is a good thing to have happen in a partner. And he went off and treated this factory like it was his own, partly because it was. Now, and then you said you duplicated that subsidiary structure across 6 factories and then expanded much more dramatically. And you also, at that point, also noted that principle of distributed ownership should be brought down to the workers. So you were starting to develop that as an explicit philosophy. Now, why do you think it was that you realized that your foreman needed ownership? Why do you think you were willing to grant it to him? And why do you think that the agreement that you made, which was that you would own 1/3 or that he would own 1/3 of the company and you would own 2/3, why do you think that was a desirable and compelling motivational arrangement for your foreman?
First of all, a deal, it got to be a deal for both sides. It's got to be good, right? And as a company grows, circumstances might change a bit, et cetera, et cetera. So you make provisions if you can. The reason why I think he was delighted with the deal is when we had verbal arrangements, I never went back on my word. I think that's a very key, right? So he felt comfortable when they say we take out 1/3, right? We take out a portion in a pro rata. So he felt kind of comfortable, right? That's very crucial. Like later on, if once when they had about 30 or 40 or 50 or 100 factories, and I had a prospective manager, which I interviewed. I said, look, there's the name, the addresses of 100 factories. Pick whoever manager you want to choose and ask him how I run things. Okay? The message what I wanted to get across, if you promise something, you must keep it. Doesn't matter what the thing is. Because if you got the ability, you can always make monies. If you lose your reputation, you can never repair it. So I think I had a reputation built up. And again, when I said small companies, you don't need a formal structure. It's kind of loose. It's pure free enterprise. Like when I was small, when I had about 20, 30, or 40 workers, I showed you my bank book and said, look, this is our contract we have here. If you do X, I share it with you, right? So it's pure free enterprise. And that's what I want to get across. That's pure capitalism. But capitalism, if we don't change, if we do not let workers participate, the system is self-destructive. And let me give you a quick story, right? I spent a lot of time in Washington. At one time, I had a meeting with the leader of the House, Mitch McConnell. He's the senator from Kentucky. He was the president of the Senate. I had a farm in Kentucky, so I knew him. So I said, Mitch, let's, I'd like to see you one of these days. So we arranged, I met him, and I said, Mitch, America did great via the free enterprise system. And without free enterprise, there's no free society. So we must do everything we can to have free enterprise. But I said, free enterprise got a major problem. So he said, what do you mean by that? I said, Mitch, more and more capital is held by fewer and fewer. And I said, in nature, when a species does not reproduce itself, another species will take over. And the laws of nature are much stronger than any man-made law, right? And that's what happens now. That's the way we're going to go. So we got to share with the employees. Because without employees, we can't make a profit. And if employees make more money, they have more purchasing power. The economy functions better. Okay? So we must have the large companies. They must have more of a discipline because sometimes they run by institutions, and they have got no more affinity for people, that they just look at the share price, they look at the profits. So it's not there, right? So the owners are not there anymore. So anyway, we need a discipline there. But we must open up. It's so crucial that small enterprise, that we don't tie them up in chains and with regulations.
The Bible is the root of all wisdom, inspiration, and spiritual nourishment. The Hallow app empowers you to explore the Bible's profound teachings and to effortlessly incorporate them into your daily life. A great place to start while you deepen your understanding of the Bible is to check out Father Mike Schmitz's Bible in a Year, available on the Hallow app for brief daily readings and reflections. Here you can dive into an extensive library of Bible reading plans, accompanied by insightful reflections and audio-guided meditations. Whether you're a seasoned Bible reader or just starting your journey, Hallow provides a platform for you to engage with Scripture like never before. Studying the Bible's literary brilliance has influenced countless writers, poets, and artists throughout history. By studying the Bible yourself, you'll gain a deeper appreciation for the power of storytelling, symbolism, and metaphor, enriching your understanding of literature across different genres. The Hallow app also helps you connect with a community of like-minded individuals, sharing experiences, insights, and encouragement along the path to spiritual growth. Download the app for free at hallow.com/Jordan. You can set reminders and track your progress along the way. Enrich your education and nurture your mind and soul today. Download the Hallow app at hallow.com/Jordan. That's hallow.com/Jordan. hallow.com/Jordan for an exclusive 3-month free trial of all 10,000 plus prayers and meditations.
Okay, now you highlighted three things. The first thing you highlighted was that the people that you were negotiating could trust you. Now, people who are cynically critical of capitalism tend to justify that by noting the sort of winner-take-all problem that you described. And then they presume that if you're greedy and you shovel everything towards yourself, you're most likely to, let's say, win in the capitalist enterprise. But you pointed out something very much contrary to that. Three things, actually. The first is that you don't develop a reputation by screwing other people. You develop a reputation by telling other people what you're going to do and then bloody well doing it. And that you should also write down what you say you're going to do so that everybody remembers and knows exactly what the deal is. That you said that by the time you were negotiating, let's say with a foreman who wanted to leave, you had enough track record with him of trust so that he believed that you would do what you said you were going to do, and he could envision a future with you without having to worry about your motivations. So you established your trust. Then you also realized that he was going to be a hell of a lot more motivated if he was an owner in the system, right? And so your answer to the problem of capitalism isn't exactly less capitalism. It's a much more distributed and generous form of capitalism that pulls everybody, the workers and the managers and owners, into the profit-making structure. Now, the other advantage, this is so cool, because I've learned this as I've built enterprises too. If you make a really great deal with someone and the person's good and they're competent and they're honest and they're productive and they're generous, if you make a really good deal with them and you can let them go off on their own, that means that they're going to take care of 1,000 details on their own, keeping their own affairs in order that you don't have to take care of anymore. You don't have to micromanage. And that means that you can go off and, expand your enterprise and do your own thing. And so the advantage you gain by distributing more responsibility, let's say to an extremely competent foreman, the advantage you gain is massive freedom. And you also gain the advantage of the fact that that foreman who now partakes in the enterprise is going to be much more motivated to make the enterprise work And so even if you end up paying him more, like a third of the company, let's say, or the profit share that you described, the overall profit is going to be so much greater that there's nothing in it but benefit for you and for him. And then you also pointed out, and this is a very crucial thing for people to understand, because this is where the left-wing critics of capitalism actually have a point, although it's not a problem that's specific to capitalism, which is that as an enterprise grows, and it doesn't matter what the enterprise is, the benefits tend to flow into the hands of fewer and fewer people. And that destabilizes the whole damn enterprise, because you get too many slaves on the bottom and not enough pharaohs on the top. And that produces discontent and dissatisfaction and amotivation, and that can bring the whole damn system to a halt. So your solution to that was to set up this constitution that you described, which also enabled you to grow. I'm going to review it again because it's very, very important. This is the Economic Charter of Rights. So your management philosophy is to distribute responsibility and profit, and to make that an explicit part of the agreement. And the deal is 20% of the profits go to the shareholders, 6% to the management, 10% to the workers, 2% to charity, 7% reinvested in research and further development. And you make that explicit. Now, the trust you described is also crucial, because the workers with whom you're arranging to share the profits aren't going to trust that deal or go along with it if they think you're going to gerrymander the books on the profit side, right? They have to actually believe that you're going to play a straight game. But if you can explain to them that, well, you're going to play a straight game because if you motivate them properly, they're going to work a hell of a lot harder, and everybody's going to make a lot more money, and the products are going to have higher quality, and we're going to sell more, then there's absolutely nothing there for people to, steal selfishly and run away with. There's only the possibility that all that distributed responsibility and ability is going to produce more and more, it's going to be more and more productive and more generous. Now, I asked you when we met at the restaurant a couple of months ago whether or not you had run into labor problems as you grew, because going from, no employees to 100,000, you're obviously going to be dealing with potential labor issues. And you said that as a consequence of this constitution and the trustworthiness of the process that you've been able to pay your workers a premium rate, but that you've also had almost no labor trouble. Is that correct? Have I got that right?
Yeah, that is correct. And the interesting part about it is we were basically in the automobile industry, and the Auto Workers Union was maybe the strongest union in America, right? Okay, so anyway, the president of the Canadian Auto Workers Union, his name was Buzz Hargrove, or still is his name. And I called him and I said, Buzz, let's have lunch. The two of us, we have an obligation. What are we going to do to maintain jobs and create new jobs? I said, let's have lunch. So we agreed, and then we sat down and I said, Buzz, it shouldn't be that difficult to put on one page what's important for the workers and on one page what's important for business. And we call that a framework of economic justice. After a few weeks, we managed it a bit. We agreed on the thing, on that structure. He said to me, I might not get it through to my membership. Okay. But he did get it through. And we incorporated that. We took 2 factories where we said, look, we're going to try and see how that works, right? The part was our workers were very upset. They said, look, we find we are happy. You want to change a total different thing here. I said, look, I have an obligation. We live in a society. We are a very important part of that society. We got to find ways and means. Can we learn from that, right? Because when I made my, if you have a few hundred factories, when I made my rounds, I made it a habit always do at least every month I see maybe a new a factory which I haven't seen for a while. When I made my rounds, I got the workers together and I said, look, those are the basic principles. But I said, let's make one thing clear. No government can guarantee your jobs. No union can guarantee your jobs. Not even Magna can guarantee your jobs. But I'm the head of the Magna. I can guarantee one thing, the basic principles. And that is, the very key, I said, is if labor and management work together and make a quality product, that's the best guarantee. That's the best guarantee. And we can make the quality product if we communicate. And we put a very important structure in our company, right? We audit the human capital. It's a very unusual thing here. First of all, I put in a hotline. I had some trusted people, and we got a big notice on in the factories. If you're unhappy with something, discrimination. Unfairness, or women get bested by whatever it is, call a hotline. But you don't have to give your name. And I had people then investigate. Those were trusted people. And now when I would talk with managers, they said, that's one of the best things you did. Because the first reaction when I did that, the manager said, are you spying on us? They were unhappy. But now it's another, because if you have an unhappy employee, unhappiness is contagious. If you get unhappy employees, there's no way you can make a quality product at a competitive price. So that's very, so we've done that on a verbal thing where we have, and then we did actually an audit, a human audit, where an employee got an envelope with no name on it, and they could take it home and fill it out, various questions. Is it safe? Is it fair? Discrimination, whatever. You could fill it out. And there's only one in an envelope, no name on it, and you drop it in a box. And it's collected, and then we analyze it. And we could see right away if there was a problem. Okay, we could see it. So that is another very, because as a manager, let's say, at the average factory was about 200 people in our, and that's another very important thing to become. I always had efficiency experts come to me, Christ, together with 400 factories, reduce it maybe to 20 or whatever. That means to have maybe 5,000, 10,000 people per factory. People become a number. It doesn't work. It doesn't work, right? So look, you should never forget the human side, right? by having smaller factories, and let's say the factory is located more in the northerly region, it's run like a factory, right? If hunting season comes and some people want to take some time off, other people jump in. I said, like, I cover for you. I work the extra time. It's everything relates to people. The work has got to be an equal. And I said to myself, and I said to the managers, your number one thing is every day you got to work. Are you respected by the workers? That's your main aim. You got to be respected. And once when you built that thing, then you be productive, right? The workers think of better ways to make things, right? And business is easy. All you have to do is make a better product for a better price. That's as easy as it is.
According to a recent report, Planned Parenthood continues to rake in billions despite dwindling clients. The biggest takeaway here is that Planned Parenthood is generating vast profits, including millions in taxpayer funding. With the help of Preborn, you and me, we are stealing their clientele, meaning the babies they are trying to kill. Preborn operates on a very slim budget as they rescue over 200 babies' lives every day, and they receive no government funding. Preborn's network of clinics are situated in the darkest corners, competing head-to-head with the abortion giants. They need our help now more than ever. When you donate $28 to Preborn, you will offer a free ultrasound to an expectant mother caught in crisis. Once she hears that heartbeat and sees that precious life, her baby's chance at life doubles. If you would like to sponsor a precious baby's life, your gift will be tax-deductible and will go directly towards saving babies' lives. Dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby, or visit preborn.com/Jordan. All gifts are tax-deductible. You will never regret saving a child's life. That's pound 250 baby, or visit preborn.com/Jordan.
So you pointed out there are a number of things that are extremely interesting. So one of them, you imagine that you're trying to differentiate your enterprise as it grows. You have 100,000 employees, and obviously there has to be a hierarchy between you and them. The question is, what size should the pieces of that hierarchy be? You know, there's an anthropological literature that relates cortical expansion, so brain size, to average group size in primate communities. And the optimized group size for human beings seems to be something around 200. What generally happens in hunter-gatherer societies is that if a society exceeds about 200 individuals, it'll break into two separate societies. That's very common. And I think the reason for that is, I think the reason for that is the one that you just pointed out, is that there's once a network of associations gets to be too big, you stop having that personal connection with people and you start to become a number. Like I've certainly seen this in educational institutions. You know, the huge universities reduce the university students to numbers. They're irrelevant. There's no personal relationship. And so the students end up feeling alienated, and that demolishes their motivation. And, you know, in the typical educational apparatus in the higher education field, you have a 40% dropout in the first year. And that's obvious. That's a catastrophic figure. And I know a college, Hillsdale College, a small place. It's only got 1,200 people and it's hierarchically organized. They've managed to get their dropout rate down to 1%. So 40% is an absolute crime. Now, you talked about human audit. You also talked about allowing employees to put forward their concerns and to indicate their unhappiness with process and to bring new ideas to the forefront without having to worry that they were going to be targeted for doing so. And that was very effective. So you set up communication networks in your factories and you kept them small so you could do that. How do you guys do in terms of employee wages, in terms of per capita employee productivity, and with regard to turnover?
Well, first of all, when I listen to you, there is in universities a lecture course of what is the optimum people who are on the leadership, etc., and how many people are below or whatever. It's 200, right? So I should go back to school to maybe learn more about that. So but in practice, you get to know. you learn as you go along. In practice, and every business might be a little different, right? Okay. But in our thing, what I could see about a factory with 200 people, the manager had to again and practically know everybody by his first name. And how is Billy, your son? How is he in football? It's that kind of environment, right? A genuine, not a phony one, right? Not a phony one, because employees will realize if it's phony, or if it's genuinely meant, right? That's very crucial, right? So anyway, over the years, I gave a lot of lectures in universities, and I always start the students when they started out. The success of life can only be measured the degree of happiness you have. But I said, let me tell you from my experience, it's a lot easier to be happy if you got some monies. The smart students always have asked, well, how can we make some monies? So I said, look, if you be around 20, in your early 20s, you don't know yourself that well. Experiment a bit. Do something what you enjoy. When you enjoy something, you're going to be good in it. If you put in the extra effort, you could be one of the best, whatever it is. If you be one of the best, money is a byproduct. But I said, but one thing don't forget. You must not forget. Life has been great to you. Your parents sacrificed that you perhaps went to school. You have a right to use that knowledge, what you accumulated in school, for your own benefits. But never forget, a portion of that wisdom, of that knowledge, gotta go back to society to a better society. But the very interesting thing is, it's only the last number of years I came to the conclusion that, look, we have no faculties, right? I mean, as far as I can see universities, their mandate is to teach young people, can we have a more civilized society? Or be more specific, can we teach young people, can we as a university participate to develop a structure which could lead to an ideal society? That should be the main focus of a university. Yes, we in universities, we teach great medicine, great art, great sport, great technology, but we do not teach, what is the structure of an ideal society. But it dawned on me, in the United States, about 70% of the universities are subsidized by private industry. And in Canada, 100% under the provincial jurisdiction, 100% subsidized. And management doesn't want to bite the hand which feeds them. But luckily I could convince the Minister of Education of universities, Jill Roundtree, and I think I'm doing a series in search of the ideal structure, which would lead to an ideal society.
Your workers, you've had little labor trouble formally. How do you know that your workers are in fact comparatively well paid in relationship to other enterprises of your type? And how do you guys do in terms of retention and promotion?
Well, we do constantly a survey. The corporate constitution says the wages got to be average to the competition within the region. And the profits in Lake Town, we had a formula. It's not up to a manager to say, I like that person or this or that, she's beautiful or whatever. We have a formula. The formula was based upon, we wanted to reward loyalty. And suppose you get a point for every year you've been with the company. Suppose you've been with the company 5 years, you get 5 points for loyalty. And suppose you get a point for every $5,000 you earn. And suppose you earn 50,000, you get 10 points for knowledge, right? And the more points you have, the more you share out at the bot, right? But it's pre-formulated, right? So we want to reward loyalty and performance. The managers are separate, right? They purely participate in their factory. I've always said there is no bad employees, only bad managers, and there's very few bad managers. Or let me rephrase it: there's some managers which need more learning experience, right? But there's very few bad managers. But there's no bad employees, okay? Because it's our thing to assist them in learning and what makes a factory run. And I guess as a businessman, it's what makes the economy run in a country. The economy, we need a new model of the economy, and I think Canada could be the first country with an economic charter of rights. An economic charter of rights, it's fundamental.
How many companies, okay, you've had a lot of success with this particular model of corporate governance, and it's allowed you to grow very rapidly, to develop a very large enterprise and to maintain it across now quite a long time, because it's about 50 years, 70 years. That's very long in the corporate world. How widespread have your ideas of constitutional profit sharing become? And what, in your view, has been the impediment to their wider acceptance?
Well, keep in mind, I was for many years on the corporate governance board of NASDAQ, or the New York Stock Exchange. Okay, where we take a look, minority interest or the market not behaving properly, right? And we interfaced with the SEC Security Commission and brought forward that the market needs changing. Okay, there's no different in here. It's a constant, and it should be done within the company, right? And so it's expected that management live to certain standards. Employees have to live in society. We have to teach standards. We have to. We don't teach enough our kids what it's all about, okay? And after I finished my schooling in Austria, I moved to Switzerland, right? It was a great learning experience. It's a great country with great people. It's made relative easy to demand a referendum. Okay, and so on important things they have referendums. In about 2 years, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, Swiss people defeated a referendum to have more vacation. I think the referendum was to move the vacation up from 3 weeks to 5 weeks. The people defeated it and said we cannot afford it.
Right.
It's the ultimate democracy.
So why have the ideas that you've put forward in relationship to the corporate constitution not being accepted and implemented by more companies, do you think? I mean, your model has shown that if you're more generous with the profit distribution, and if you formalize that distribution, you seem to gain an increment in productivity. And so why, also given the fact that, capital tends to accrue in the hands of fewer and fewer people, and that's a problem for the maintenance of the popularity of the capitalist system in general, why do you think your economic model hasn't met with more acceptance? Is it just that it's too new? New ideas take a long time to distribute. What's the impediment?
Sure. I wrote a book, The Greed Factor, right? And Homo sapiens are born with some greed. Without greed, Homo sapiens cannot exist. And but greed, after a certain thing, it's the most destructive force. So, like I said, I've been on the corporate governance board. What an education. We've made it too complicated for public companies, right? The paragraphs, like, I mean, it's so complicated that it's just not feasible anymore, right? So young entrepreneurs think, and so everything is more complicated. So we got to get back again. And there was nothing wrong with Canada about 40, 50, 60 years ago. So everything functioned quite well. So we have gotten into that where we analyze, where we look. When you look at our what the best way to bring it across is when you take a look at our DAX codex. It's a thick book with thousands of paragraphs. Keep in mind, when I fully run Magna, I had 20 lawyers on one side of my office and 20 financial experts just on the other side. When I went to the lawyers and said, I'd like to do XXX, is that within the law? Well, they said, that's within the law. I went to the thing here now, how is it treated from a tax point of view? After a week, you got the thing. It's so complete, it's so gray, it could be either way. But they said there's some experts down in the city, which so you sent them the problem or the clarification. After a few weeks, they get a big bill, and they say it can be either way. So everything, every paragraph, there's thousands and thousands. They're more convoluted than the others. Until we have a DAX system, black and white, where everybody can fill out down, how can a society function? The DAX system is slanted in favor of specialized interest groups. That's the dilemma.
Well, so you mentioned earlier in our conversation that you believe that it would be very difficult for you to start your, dual garage basic factory today, that the regulatory burden would be just too high. And so, as societies move forward in time, they tend to accrue more and more rules, right? They tend to stagnate themselves, and that's a constant danger. I mean, one of the advantages to the capitalist system is that large, unwieldy enterprises that no longer function get killed by the market and disappear. And we don't really have an equivalent function of death, let's say, in the bureaucratic realm. We have elections, but that doesn't really affect the bureaucratic state. Do you have any sense of how it might be possible to clear out some of the regulations that are impeding entrepreneurial development? And have you had any success in talking to politicians, let's say in Canada, about how some of that house cleaning might occur?
The politicians can't do it. I could give you many reasons, or maybe some other times we have a little more time. But and again, I want to point out, no chainsaw approach. It's not the fault of the bureaucrats, it's the fault of the system. But a civilized way would be not to rehire till he reaches a certain status, right? And it's got to relate to the GDP, to the the GDP, to what we can create. It needs X. Same as a management needs X managers, the same a society could have on the bureaucratic side, a certain percentage related to the market, to what does the country produce.
Let's talk a little bit about the future now. One of the things we discussed when we first met was a new product that you're bringing to market, and on the cheap and easily accessible transportation side, especially for urban commuters. Do you want to talk about the product that you guys are bringing to market soon, and where you're going to build that and what your vision is for that?
Yes, about 2 years ago, the premier called me and he said, I got a problem. I said, what? He said, General Motors is closing. You know the car industry. I got inducted in the American Automotive Hall of Fame in 2018. So I said, yeah, give me a few days, give me a week. I'll bring forward something. At around that time, I had to go down a few times. I should say the Magna head office is in Aurora, which is about 21 minutes down to the 401, right? So anyway, around that time, I had to go down a few times. What used to take me half an hour from the outer ring to the inner ring to Bay Street, now would take, if everything is fine, would take an hour, but it could take 2 hours. So I got stuck a few times, 2 hours, and I said, what a waste of human energy, what a waste of non-renewable energies, but most of all, what a to inhale the carbon monoxide for 2 hours on the way in, 2 hours home. I said, what damage that does to the health, to the well-being of people. So anyway, I went back to the workbench. Okay. I should say Magna is a major car manufacturing company. We have one factory where we produce all the Mini Coopers for the whole world. They be shipped out of our factories right into the showrooms right across the world. We developed the Aston Martin to repeat, right from our factory, shipped to the showrooms. A very unique car, no welding, no screwing. It was built like an airplane. It was glued together, right? But anyway, so I think I've done that for 60 years. I came to the conclusion it's got to be a small electric car. I think we coined the phrase micromobility. And in loose terms, micromobility means you need, you got to be able to park at least 4 of those in a regular car parking spot. To be more precise, they cannot be wider than 3.5 feet, not longer than 7 feet. And you can plug it in any electrical outlet, 110 volt, and in a few hours you can go 100 kilometers with it for less than $1, or you can have a quick charging too. So it will change transportation. Its main purpose is to get people from your home to your workplace and back home. We also done an equivalent small pickup truck, which will do inner city merchandise delivery. And I should be in mass production about 2-3 months. The fact is, just around, we got the first prototypes coming off the line, and it will change transportation for many reasons. The primary reason is there's only so much oil in the grounds. The reason why gasoline prices are relatively cheap is the United States is utilizing 120 million tons of grain to convert it into ethanol to keep the gasoline price down. You can't do that for long because the next wave will be, or the critical wave for society will be food shortages in the world, not triggered by the Ukraine. It would have come anyway, but will be accelerated quicker by what goes on in the Ukraine, because the Ukraine is a major food producer. So, and the United States can't do that. So the gasoline prices will go up dramatically. I would say will double in 2-3 years. But most of all, I predict in 8 years, gasoline will be rationalized, will only be available for essential purposes. One of the essential purposes will be electric trucks, not electric, pardon me, gasoline trucks will haul the food from the farms to the cities because the grid power will not be there for large electric trucks. Or you will not solve the traffic jams because the grid power isn't there. It would take much time and you might have to go with small atomic powered stations, right? But that's another thing here, right? But the grid system isn't there. I built the first hydrogen car with BMW about 15 years ago. Yes, it works, but much more cumbersome, much more expensive. And I see a small electric car, that's the answer for now, for the next 50, 100 years.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what it looks like and what people can expect? What people can expect to see and experience when they use this particular vehicle?
Okay, they're basically small, right? Again, its main purpose is to go from your home to your workplace and back home. Okay, and that means we have stifled the speed at 32 kilometers per hour, right? So basically, the insurance be so minimal or practically none because you can't do any damage. Two people can sit in a car, and the people in the pickup truck, there's 4 people can sit in there. It could be a taxi, it could be merchandise delivery vehicle. So I think we have. We showed it on the Canadian Auto Show. We had the biggest lineups and thousands of people drove it. They got all enthusiastic about it. And the key question is, how do we got to get around? That's the key question.
Right. Well, it looked like a kind of a hybrid between an electric car and a motorcycle, essentially. And you mentioned as well, that many families have a conundrum where, because there are 2 people working and they tend to work in different locations, that they need 2 vehicles, and one of the vehicles, and both vehicles are very expensive, and they're over determined for the purpose. People need a commuter vehicle, essentially, as well as an ordinary vehicle to do all the other things they need to do with it. And your sense was that this vehicle would supply a low-cost alternative to people who primarily need transportation to work and back, and who would be using their other vehicle for primary purposes other than that. Does that seem about right?
A few changes. When I look down the road, now usually call it the middle class has a 2-car garage, 2 cars, right? Because the husband maybe went to work. In some cases, the wife do, but in many cases, the wife stayed home. She had kids, had to bring the kids to school or to shopping, etc., etc. So when I look down the road, I think you need a special permit for a large electric car for a family that you could go to the cottage or that for special purpose, not for daily commute, huh? Okay, and you have 2 or 3. You could get 4 small cars in there in a regular 2-car garage, and this is where kids see their friends, or where the wife or the husband go shopping. So to run around, right? To do things, meet up with your friends, and go to school or whatever, go to work, and just it's reliable transport at low cost and no greenhouse gases.
I would like to thank you very much for the time you spent today. I think it's very useful to explain to people. I think it's extremely useful to have explained to people.
Jordan, I don't want to flatter you. You are gifted to bring out the inner workings of a lot of machinery, a lot of people. And that's, as a technician, yes, I'd be able to trans reasonable well, but you have a gift to transmit it, that it be easily understood by the people. So I'm delighted that I came. I'm delighted that I was invited.
Well, it's so, what struck me in our conversations was the importance of disseminating your vision for fostering a generous productivity. You created an enterprise that's distributed. You said that you've made millionaires out of many of your foremen, out of people who've rose to the position where they could run their own factories. You've given people the opportunity to have a tremendous amount of autonomy under your overarching authority and to bring out the best of them as they build their own factories and as they employ more and more people. And you've managed also to distribute that responsibility and opportunity all the way down to the workers. And, it's absolutely obvious to me that there's never been a more effective machine for producing wealth than the free exchange capitalist system. The data on that are crystal clear. As soon as you stop countries from doing absolutely idiotic economic things and free up their population under a quasi-capitalist market, then everybody becomes richer. Then you have the emergent problem of inequality, and that's a problem. But your system of distributed profits, given that it's honestly run, is a reasonable solution to that problem. And it's very good to hear you talk about how motivated you've been to build the company and to produce all the products you have, but also how much you've been able to motivate other people while being productive and solving the problem of unequal distribution. So thank you very much for bringing that to everyone's attention.
I had a few more words. My motivation was never to be hungry anymore and live in dignity. And the reason is it's very important. If a manager, let's say a Magna manager, wanted to make more money, he had to replace himself and has to open up another factory. So a manager could replace himself maybe 20, 30, or 50 times. And then he gets a cut from each factory where he made a contribution, a percentage of the profits. And this way, some of them, their yearly income maybe was 5 million or 10 million. So the more they made, the more the shareholders made, the more workers made. So when I said it's so important that we have smaller companies, that young kids got to see, I want to be able to do like Joe Brown. I want to make 50 million or 100 million, or like the football player, like the hockey player. We must give them the motivation, right? But let it be, right? Some people are quite happy with an XXX. Let it be. Let everybody. I love the Beatles, their song. Let it be. Let it be. Let everybody be. Let everybody be. Let everybody find their own way to happiness. Thank you.
My pleasure, man. To everybody watching and listening, thank you very much for your time and attention. The film crew up here in Northern Ontario and down where Frank is, thank you for the provision of flawless technical expertise on this front. To the Daily Wire Plus for making these conversations possible. I'm going to continue talking to Mr. Frank Stronach for another half an hour on the Daily Wire Plus platform. A bastion of free speech in an increasingly censorial world. And so if those of you who are watching and listening are inclined to devote your attention to that platform, that would be much appreciated and maybe increasingly necessary as the months unfold. I'm looking forward to coming and looking at your factory, Mr. Stronach. I think that would be very much fun. I love looking at industrial enterprises because, well, it's lovely to see that much concerted and harmonious effort working out to produce things that people actually need. I really wish you luck with your new vehicle. I hope that you've hit the market dead on and that people find this vehicle, inexpensive, reliable, and useful, like many of your other products have been. And so that would be a lovely thing to see. It would be great to see that happening in Canada because we lack a little entrepreneurial zing at the moment, and that's not as it should be. And so
I didn't get in the most important message. What my main aim is. My main aim is I got about 10, 15 years ago, very heavily in the agriculture. The deeper I got into it, the more I could see this chemical jungle, with all the pesticide and all the fungicide. So 95% of the food eaten comes from industrial farms. On industrial farms, you see no more eagles fly away. There's no more pheasants. There's no more rabbits. We spray everything with fungicide and pesticides. It gets in the air, we breathe it, gets in water, we drink it, gets in the soil, we eat the food. And all the kids practice allergies and stage 2 diabetics is on the rise. So my main goal is, I don't want to see any Canadian kid to go to school hungry. That means breakfast got to be served. I don't want to see any Canadian kid to leave the school hungry. That means lunch has got to be served. And by law, with the state, it has to be organic. I got everything in, but there's lots more to do where the public should know. Thank you. I enjoyed being with you.
My pleasure, man. And we'll meet in a couple of minutes on the Daily Wire side and then again in the future. And thanks again, everybody, for watching and listening today.
Thank you.